Today, we are cracking open one of the most explosive secret files in American history. We're talking about a collection of documents so sensitive they were kept under lock and key for over 30 years, and they detailed the CIA's darkest and most illegal operations. When these files finally saw the light of day in 2007, they basically confirmed what top officials had been whispering about for years. National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger, after getting just a peek, had a simple, pretty chilling description for the collection. He called it a horror book. And this so-called horror book, it was a whopping 693 pages long. It was an internal pile of memos and reports that laid out decades of the CIA's most controversial activities, known informally inside the agency as the family jewels. So the huge question is, right? What on earth could be in these files that was so damning it had to be hidden away for 3 whole decades? Well, to really get it, we have to travel back to one of the most paranoid and chaotic moments in American history. All right, so let's set the scene here. We're talking about the early 1970s, and America was basically a pressure cooker. There was this huge divide between the government and its people, and the whole country was just lurching from one crisis to the next. During this period, public trust just completely collapsed. First, confidence in the Vietnam War fell apart. Then, the Pentagon Papers leak proved the government had been lying about the war for years. And to top it all off, the Watergate scandal made it seem like there was a deep rot at the very heart of the White House. Paranoia was absolutely everywhere. So it's right in the middle of this swamp of scandal and suspicion that a new CIA director, James Schlesinger, makes a move that absolutely nobody saw coming. You see, Schlesinger was getting really worried. The guys who broke into the Watergate Hotel, they had ties to the CIA, and he was terrified the agency was being illegally dragged into domestic politics. He became convinced this was just the tip of the iceberg, and that the CIA was hiding a whole legacy of secrets that could destroy it. And so on May 9th, 1973, he drops an absolute bombshell of a directive. He ordered every single employee to report on any activities they knew of that were outside the agency's legal mandate, its official charter. This was the moment that basically kicked open the CIA's closet, forcing all the skeletons to come tumbling out. And what came pouring in? Well, it was even worse than he could have possibly imagined. So let's take a look inside the most shocking parts of this horror book. What it turned out to be was this massive catalog of the agency just systematically abusing its power. This wasn't just a few rogue agents. It was a chronicle of operations that went way beyond and often directly against what the CIA was legally allowed to do. Okay, so get this. The CIA was never, ever supposed to spy on Americans at home. But driven by this Cold War paranoia that foreign governments were secretly behind the anti-war movement, the agency launched something called Operation Chaos. They wiretapped journalists, illegally opened citizens' mail for 2 decades, and built secret files on thousands of Americans. But the wrongdoing went way beyond just domestic spying. Oh no. Back then, with almost zero congressional oversight, the agency got involved in assassination plots against leaders like Fidel Castro. They ran Project MKUltra, these terrifying mind control experiments using LSD on citizens who had no idea what was happening. They even broke into the homes of their own former employees. So when you put it all together, what you have is this just massive, glaring contradiction. The CIA's secret history, all laid out in the family jewels, was a flagrant violation of the very law that created the agency in the first place. So for a little while, Schlesinger and his successor managed to keep this horror book locked away. But come on, secrets this explosive, they have a way of getting out. And then, in December 1974, the whole thing just blew wide open. An investigative journalist named Seymour Hersh published a front-page bombshell in the New York Times, exposing the CIA's massive illegal spying on Americans. The public outrage was immediate and huge, forcing Congress to act. This led to the famous Church Committee hearings, which publicly exposed the abuses and resulted in the first real permanent oversight of U.S. intelligence. But this story doesn't just end there, back in the 70s. Not at all. Because when the full 693-page report was finally declassified in 2007, it kicked off a whole new debate about government secrecy. I mean, even after more than 30 years, the version of the family jewels they handed over to the public was just covered in these huge black bars. Entire pages and paragraphs were redacted, censored by the very agency whose crimes they were supposed to be documenting. Which, of course, raises the obvious question: what are they still hiding? And this isn't just a one off thing. This whole fight over the family jewels is part of a much bigger, ongoing battle between government secrecy and the public's right to know. We see the exact same pattern with the JFK assassination files and the Senate's report on post 9/11 torture. Long delays, heavy redactions, and a ton of lingering questions. Which brings us to one last, kind of unsettling thought. The release of the family jewels gave us a jaw dropping look into the past, for sure. But all those blacked out pages, they're a pretty powerful reminder that some secrets never die. So the thing to take away from all this isn't just what we learned, it's that nagging question of what else we still don't know.